Change is hard. Our day-to-day actions are based on habits that have been built over a long period of time. They're founded in the bedrock of our self-image. Our identity is something that's usually shaped by things that happen to us more than things that we've chosen for ourselves, and it has a tendency to be self-reinforcing. So when we try to make changes, if they skew too far from how we see ourselves, it's really hard to make them stick. Welcome to WizNugs. Today we're talking about change and how to really make habits stick. We got some practical tips, so stick around. A recent episode of Andrew Huberman's podcast, he's discussing habit forming. So he was discussing an experiment or a study or something where the idea was to have people take on a new habit of taking a walk after dinner.
Okay.
He found out that in order to get that habit, some people took as little as 3 weeks. Other people took 9 months.
See, and I've always heard of the old adage or saying, old habits die hard. But I guess in this particular case, creating new ones is hard.
We're dealing with a deeply embedded sense of self that fights against change, that fights against the new, especially if it's something that we don't think that we can do or should do.
So what was the result from the actual study or experiment?
So Huberman describes the gap, the problem here, the difference that explains why some people could do it quickly and other people took a long time. He called it limbic friction.
Okay.
The idea being that if the thing is too far away from who you think you are, that your mind is going to fight against it. There's that moment in your decision of, do I actually get up after dinner to take this walk? Where you fight it if it's something that you're not used to.
So we go back to what we talked about before. If you've never seen yourself doing it, it's almost impossible to see yourself doing it.
Right. So what it really comes down to is the action has to come first.
Okay.
Fighting against your brain is a losing battle because your self-identity is your core of your being. So if you see yourself as somebody who doesn't take walks after dinner, for whatever reason, to make that big change is a big deal.
Right. And I know that we as humans can rationalize anything. And something as simple as, well, we should probably start taking a walk after dinner every night. It's really easy, like, oh, you know what? I just had too much to eat. Oh, and I got work things to do now. And oh, I still got to go look at that pet project I've been working on. I'm not going to do it today.
Or my kids need to be put to bed. Or, oh, but we always watch a show after dinner. There's a lot of reasons to not do it because those are the habits that we do have.
Yeah. And so rationalization is sometimes associated with, at least in my understanding, with utility. Meaning, what is the thing that's going to bring me the greatest joy, happiness, contentment at that moment? And I know walking around the block is not something I normally do, and I don't know how that's going to make me any more happy than me going on my computer or going to do something family event with the kids. That's anything that's not walking.
It's been my experience that rationalization happens after the fact.
Really?
That we decide what we're going to do based on purely emotional processes. It's the habit, it's the reasoning that we don't fully understand, and then we decide why in a way that sort of makes sense to explain everything.
If it's something that's good for me, I will rationalize it first and then not do the thing and go find something else to do. I don't even necessarily have anything else in mind.
But that's my point. You've already made the decision that you don't want to do it.
Sure.
Then you write the rationalization.
Yeah, so in this case, the action is the no action.
So there's an expression that I heard that when there's friction, one of the things you got to do is grease the skids.
Okay, I'm familiar with this.
Which basically just means you've got to have some kind of lubricant to take that friction away. So in this case, there's some normal, everyday, accessible things that we can leverage to actually make the change stick. So one of the things that we've talked about before is using our digital tools.
Right.
That we can use very, very easily. We've all got phones or some kind of device with us almost all the time that has the capability for setting reminders, timers, calendar events.
For longtime viewers, you'll probably recall this when we talked about it in Gears and Stats episode.
Building on that, using digital tools is just kind of one layer here. Another one that really helps us as social creatures that humans are, leverage people. We talked before about the accountability buddy concept. Yes. And that's one thing of doing is you can ask someone to be your accountability buddy. someone that you can be accountable to give progress reports and updates.
Or someone that's going to, is going to be there and they have that proclivity to help support me in the changes that I want to make and the things that I want to do. And I know that they're going to help me be accountable.
Another way that we can leverage the people around us is invite a friend to go do the activity with you.
Yeah.
If you're going to go take a walk after dinner, invite your family to come with you to go take the walk after dinner. Now it's a family activity.
And I'm not the only one suffering. Not really, but yes, that's what we tell ourselves.
Another way that we could leverage people is to take a class. If we're taking a class, that implies that we have an instructor who's showing us what to do, which can also be another thing that can stop us from starting something new. But we've also got people around us in the class that are doing things that might be able to point out for us another way that they're learning something.
I think of like going and taking like a painting class. Everybody there is going to be the novice. And so there isn't any expectation and you're not doing it for a grade. This is something for self-improvement, something to get that ball rolling.
There's cooking classes, there's music classes, there's yoga. My gym has like 5 different classes that I've never looked at before.
Well, to each their own.
Additionally, we can use incentives. We study in economics that people respond to incentives. So how do we leverage this for us? Well, money is one thing that we can do.
Yes. Yeah, the great motivator.
If you've got money put down as a deposit or as a reservation,
okay,
whether that's, this is another way that taking a class might be, you paid money to go do this class, I'm going to go do the class.
Right.
If you prepaid for a reservation or for a convention or something like that, that's one way that you can force yourself to keep going with it.
If you invite friends along with these events too, like you mentioned a convention, maybe you've just been apprehensive about going to any kind of like large social event for personal reasons or whatever, but you've invited a couple of friends that have very similar interests and they're like, yeah, let's go. You prepay for this event, and then they're all excited too. And so we talk about the accountability buddy. In this particular case, you're getting the positive reinforcement of the friends and now we're all excited about going. And so then the fears and the thoughts of dread that were in the forefront are now they're not necessarily gone, but maybe they're not the first thought that comes to mind. Maybe it's been pushed back a little bit. And now it's more about, I'm actually thinking about hanging out with these people and doing stuff. And we're going to go to this particular event. We're going to go talk at this particular forum. We're going to sit for this particular thing. And then you're like, that takes over.
We can chain these things together, right? So we're talking about, I'm just picturing in my head, if I am wanting to lose weight, for example,
okay,
one way that I might do that is say, you know what, me and my buddies, we're going to go cosplay at Comic-Con in San Diego next year. Mm-hmm. We're just going to do that. So, well, right away now, there's a date involved, there's money involved, there's travel, there's other people involved, and if I want to look good in my costume,
right,
I'm going to have to do something about that. So I've got this now deadline that I can make a plan and work toward that plan and picture myself now dressed up in, I don't know, whatever costume. I've been kind of working on an Iron Man thing myself. So using this Comic-Con example.
Yes.
If now I've got to work on a costume for the next year and I got to work on fitting into that costume and I got to work on all these plans and things, it now turns it into a project that has some excitement along with it rather than just saying, I need to diet. I need to exercise. No, the diet and exercise are part of the excitement of, I want to look good in this costume. I know I can do it.
And I know from experience, when I was younger, I, for Halloween, dressed up as multiple X-Men characters throughout the years. And I wore spandex and lycra for these costumes. So making sure that the gut was not necessarily extending beyond the chest region was very important to me.
Another thing we can do is we can use money as a different kind of incentive. We give money to a friend to hang on to pending the outcome of our goal.
Right.
And we can say, all right, at the end of 6 months, I want to have this many pages of a book written, or I want to have a Duolingo streak of this much, or whatever it is, whatever our goal is, whatever the thing you're working on is your habit. And then you've got to show progress. If you don't make that progress, your friend has instructions to donate that money to the political candidate that you hate most.
Yeah, and I can't think of anything worse than knowing that I helped someone that I cannot tolerate gain financial benefit from me.
Right? Or maybe it's just, hey, if I don't meet my goal, then you get to keep this money. Spend it on whatever you want.
And you know that their habits or the things that they're into, you're like, I can't believe you spent money on that. And now I just contributed to it.
Right. Or, I want to, your dream to have the world's largest rubber band ball. Here, spend this on rubber bands if I don't make my goal. If I do make my goal, you have to give it back.
And so that's the incentive, right? I think of it a little bit as a negative incentive, but still incentive nonetheless.
There's also some things that we can do in a sort of a mental or cognitive state to help reinforce the habits.
Okay.
Because this is all just to overcome that limbic friction until it's a real habit. When it's become part of who we are, it's a thing that's just us. We don't need to keep doing all of these extra incentive steps to get us there.
I know that in the video, he mentioned that some people were able to get it within about 3 weeks, and some people, it was like up to 9 months. There's a possibility that things that happened in our life, again, do form the habits that we have, and trying to break that habit to do something that would be beneficial to yourself is very hard because there is emotional ties to an event now makes it hard for you to form a new habit.
So one of the classes that I took in business school, we had an example of an office in which they had done this efficiency study.
Okay.
They wanted to find out how different changes in the environment could affect efficiency. So they tried making the lights brighter. They tried making the lights dimmer. They tried making it colder, hotter, doing all these different things. What they discovered was that every single change they made, people got more productive.
Regardless.
No matter what they changed, every single time they changed something, efficiency went up.
Huh.
Well, it turns out every time they changed something, the people worked harder because they knew they were being watched and measured.
So the real motivating factor here was I'm being surveilled.
Right.
And that was why the change happened.
Right. It didn't have anything to do with, well, bright lights make you work better or dim lights make you work better. It was entirely, we're watching you and measuring your productivity very closely. So the people worked really hard. So what came out of this is what is measured is what gets changed. So we have to measure our progress somehow.
Okay.
We have to record our progress, the results of our measurements, and then we have to reflect back on where we've been and how we've progressed.
And we talked about this before. We talked about when you keep a journal of goals and you're checking things off as you're going along, as you're making progress on your goal, to go back in 30 days or however long you need to, and then view from where you started and saying, I've come a long way. I didn't feel like it's a long way, but it's been very far. So I think this is part of the measurement part.
Absolutely. So we've talked in the past about how our goals should be based on things that are within our control.
Right.
We can't necessarily say, I want to lose weight. Here I go.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. But
Right.
what you can control is the foods that you eat. You can control the activities that you do, the exercise that you get. So similarly, our recording might just be the number of times that we've gone to the gym. It might be what's our personal record at a certain activity, whether that's the speed at which we can run a mile or the weight that we can lift. It might be your streak on Duolingo about how many days you've done a lesson. I know that people get really competitive about their streak and keeping that going.
Personal pride comes into play in that case.
Keeping a record of this stuff. The app like Duolingo is going to record the streak for you. So it's really, really easy to do that. It keeps going.
Right.
For some of these other things, we might have to either look for an app or find some way of writing it down, whether it's in a journal or just on a notepad that we keep with us when we're doing the activity.
Well, it's like you said, greasing the skids. Find something that's going to make doing the measurement and the recording and the reflecting easier for yourself.
Yeah, so we look back on where we started. People take before photos so that they can take after photos. So another way of reinforcing and kind of locking in that change, that habit change, would be to check in on ourselves and see how are we actually doing. Mm-hmm. On a day-to-day basis, it's really hard to notice certain changes. Like if you're losing weight, you don't see it every time you look in the mirror, especially if it's gradual over time.
Right.
You don't even notice. So that's where having photos to be able to compare and say, this is where I was, this is where I am now. Wow, I have changed. Cool.
And it's a great feeling to know that you've actually accomplished that thing.
Right. Or I couldn't play this song before and now I can. Or I've been practicing my Duolingo every day, and now I can actually have a conversation in Spanish. One more way that we can lock in that change is to think about our progress in terms of our mindset shift.
Okay.
So we can see that we've made progress on the activity itself, but now looking at who was I before? How did I react to these things? How did I respond when faced with these challenges? How am I responding now?
I can now see myself as a guy who goes and takes a walk every night after dinner, because that is the new me. That's the new version of me.
For me, one way that I can measure my mental health journey is by thinking about, where was I when I was depressed? How did I respond to things? How did I treat the people around me? Even if I don't necessarily feel amazing on a day-to-day basis, I can compare where I am now with where I was, and I can feel good about that.
Right.
Wow, I've changed. I'm doing so much better now. Also, it strikes me as being kind of funny that the me from, say, junior high would laugh that the me now likes going to the gym and exercising.
I'm assuming that's not the person you envisioned yourself to be.
That is definitely not who I was. I was one of those people who said, I only run if something's chasing me.
That's still me.
But that's another way of kind of locking in that mindset, is looking at, what did I used to be like, and am I different now? I think I am. I think I am a little different now. That feels good.
And you have to juxtapose it to something that is measurable, right? Am I the same person that I was yesterday? More than likely, there might be some small changes, but it's hard to tell. Am I the same person I was 20 years ago? No way am I the same person I was 20 years ago.
Or am I the kind of person, when I started this journey, that would freak out about every little hindrance? Or am I the kind of person now that it doesn't matter? If it's dark out, I'm fine. If it's snowing out, you know what? I'll take a short walk. Or I'll put on a heavy coat.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it, because I like this. That's a difference in the mindset as much as anything else. And now that's how you figure out, do I still have that limbic friction, or have I overcome it and now it's a real habit? Because it's incorporated into who I am.
Change is hard, but sometimes change is necessary. Instead of running away from it, as hard as it's going to be, sometimes it's in our best interest to embrace it. Know that there's going to be a benefit to engage yourself in these changes and challenge yourself to become that better version of you that you want to see yourself as.
So you've decided to change, you've greased the skids, you've given yourself incentives, and you're recording your progress and looking back on how you've grown. Tell us in the comments how it goes. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.